In a small Australian town, police officers entered a house and discovered a scene so horrifying that seasoned investigators vomited on the spot. What they found in the kitchen would haunt them for the rest of their careers. A dinner table was set for two, complete with place cards bearing the names of children. But the meal that had been prepared was something no human being should ever witness. If you're fascinated by the darkest corners of human nature, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more disturbing true stories. The year was 2000, and the small town of Aberdeen in New South Wales, Australia, was about to become the site of one of the most shocking crimes in the country's history. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, where violence was rare, and where the most exciting thing that happened was the annual country fair. But on the morning of March 1st, 2000, that peaceful facade would be shattered forever by a crime so brutal, so unthinkable, that it would earn the perpetrator a place in the annals of criminal history as one of the most depraved killers the world has ever seen. At the center of this story are two people whose paths crossed in what would become a fatal attraction. John Charles Thomas Price was a 45-year-old father of three who worked at the local abattoir. He was known as a quiet, hard-working man who loved his children and had recently ended a difficult relationship. John was looking for a fresh start, hoping to find peace after years of turmoil. Then there was Katherine Mary Knight, a 44-year-old woman with a reputation that preceded her throughout the small community. Katherine worked alongside John at the same abattoir, where she had earned a fearsome reputation for her skill with a knife and her explosive temper. Her co-workers whispered stories about her violent outbursts, her obsession with knives, and her disturbing behavior that made even hardened slaughterhouse workers uncomfortable. When John and Katherine began their relationship in 1995, those who knew them both felt a chill of foreboding. Katherine had a history of violent relationships that had ended badly, very badly. Her previous partners told stories of threats, stalking, and violence that escalated beyond anything they had ever imagined possible. But John, perhaps lonely and hoping for companionship, ignored the warnings. He moved Katherine into his home on St. Andrew Street in Aberdeen, not knowing that he was inviting a predator into his life. For 5 years, their relationship was a roller coaster of passion and violence, with Katherine's jealousy and possessiveness growing more intense with each passing month. By early 2000, John had finally reached his breaking point. Katherine's behavior had become increasingly erratic and violent. She would fly into rages over the smallest perceived slights, threatening John and anyone she believed was trying to come between them. Her obsession with knives, which she collected and sharpened with disturbing enthusiasm, had begun to terrify even John. The final straw came when Katherine's jealousy reached a fever pitch. She became convinced that John was planning to leave her, and her threats became more specific and more chilling. John, finally recognizing the danger he was in, made the decision to end the relationship. It was a decision that would cost him his life. February 29, 2000, started like any other day at the Aberdeen abattoir. John and Katherine worked their shifts, but tension hung in the air like a thick fog. John had made his decision clear. The relationship was over, and he wanted Katherine out of his house. But Katherine had other plans. That evening, something happened that would set in motion a chain of events so horrific that they would shock a nation. John returned home from work, not knowing that Katherine had spent the day planning something that would go down in criminal history as one of the most depraved acts ever committed. What happened in John Price's house on the night of February 29, 2000, was so brutal and shocking that even today, more than 2 decades later, the details are difficult to comprehend. The crime scene that police would discover the next day would be described by investigators as the most disturbing they had ever encountered. Katherine's rage had finally found its ultimate expression. Years of violent fantasies threats, and escalating behavior had culminated in an act of such savage brutality that it defied human understanding. But what she did after the killing, that was when her crime crossed from murder into something far more sinister and depraved. When John failed to show up for work on March 1st, his co-workers became concerned. John was reliable, never missing work without calling. When attempts to reach him by phone failed, police were called to conduct a welfare check at his St. Andrews Street home. What the officers found when they entered that house would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The scene was so horrific that several experienced police officers became physically ill. Crime scene photographers had to take breaks to compose themselves. Even the coroner, who had seen countless deaths in his career, was shaken by what he witnessed. The most shocking discovery was in the kitchen. Katherine had not simply committed murder, she had done something that crossed every boundary of human decency and entered territory that most people cannot even imagine. The dinner table was set with Katherine's best china, complete with place cards and vegetables arranged as side dishes. But the main course was John Price himself. Katherine had not only killed John, she had skinned him like one of the animals from the abattoir where they both worked. She had decapitated him and cooked his head along with parts of his body, arranging them on plates as if preparing a family dinner. The place cards at the table bore the names of John's children, a meal she had prepared for them to discover. As investigators pieced together the events of that horrific night, the full scope of Katherine's depravity became clear. She had not acted in a moment of passion or rage. This was a calculated, methodical act of revenge and control. She had spent hours after the killing, carefully preparing John's body, cooking his remains, and setting the table for a macabre dinner party. The evidence showed that Katherine had planned this crime with chilling precision. She had used her knowledge from working at the abattoir to expertly butcher John's body, displaying a level of skill that spoke to years of experience with knives and meat processing. Katherine was found the next day in a neighbor's house, claiming to have no memory of the events. She had taken an overdose of pills in what appeared to be a suicide attempt, but survived to face the consequences of her actions. The trial that followed would captivate Australia and horrify the world. Details of the crime were so disturbing that the judge ordered certain evidence to be sealed, deeming it too graphic for public consumption. Katherine initially pleaded not guilty, but faced with overwhelming evidence, she eventually changed her plea. On November 8, 2001, Katherine Mary Knight became the first woman in Australian history to be sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The judge described her crime as an act of extraordinary depravity and stated that she posed an ongoing danger to society. The case sent shockwaves throughout Australia and around the world. Mental health experts struggled to understand how a human being could commit such an act. Some pointed to Katherine's troubled childhood and history of mental illness, but others argued that nothing could excuse or explain the level of depravity she had displayed. Today, Katherine Knight remains in prison, where she will spend the rest of her life. She has never shown remorse for her crime, and prison officials describe her as manipulative and dangerous. The house where the crime took place was eventually demolished, but the memory of what happened there continues to haunt the small town of Aberdeen. The case of Katherine Knight stands as one of the most disturbing examples of human evil ever documented. It raises uncomfortable questions about the nature of violence, the capacity for cruelty that exists within some individuals, and the thin line that separates civilization from savagery. John Price was a man who simply wanted to end a toxic relationship and move on with his life. Instead, he became the victim of a crime so heinous that it defies comprehension. His children, who were supposed to discover their father's remains served as dinner, were spared that horror only by chance. Katherine Knight's crime reminds us that true evil exists in this world, sometimes hiding behind a familiar face in a small town where everyone thinks they know everyone else. It's a reminder that the capacity for unthinkable cruelty can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. The story of Katherine Knight and John Price is one that will continue to disturb and fascinate those who study the darkest aspects of human nature. It stands as a testament to the fact that sometimes reality is far more horrifying than any fiction could ever be. If you found this story as disturbing and fascinating as we did, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more dark, true crime stories. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who seem most ordinary,